things. I am Vaibhav and I work in Java platform team from 2006. So it's been more than 13 years I'm working in Java platform team, and I have worked in JDK development, I have worked in JDK sustaining, I have worked in JDK SQE, I have worked on Java FX also for some time. And right now I'm working in the JVM team. So this presentation is a little bit related to the Java virtual machine. I have done a lot of analysis on how the JVM leverages the performance for our own JDK, but I have also done some analysis, not that much, that how JVM is wisely used in Kotlin. Okay, and what are the good things that Kotlin provide us from the JVM? Okay. First, I will take you some of the basics of things like how the runtime compiler, that is the JIT compiler, works. What are the different optimizations that JIT compiler apply, and all those things. And after that, I'll move on to the Kotlin, that how Kotlin use it. Okay. If you have question, I think question section is better to ask, and we will see if the question will be important, and if it's a blocker, we'll try to reply at the same time. Else we will do the lazy evaluation. Yeah. Okay. Here goes my presentation. I am putting it into the full. Rohit, in between, if you see any question that has been raised, I'm going to full screen mode, so I cannot see the question panel. Okay, so please help me out.
Sure. I'll drop in between.
Okay. So yeah, so I want to tell you that Kotlin plus JVM is actually kind of awesome. Okay, so I am not a very much well-wisher of all the different languages than Java, but yeah, Kotlin has something good. Let's see this. You can tweet me on Vaibhav_C, and this blog is little out of date, but still, I mean, a lot of informative material is there on this. And we have a blog for Bangalore Jug. You can go there also. It's mentioned in the last link. This is a safe harbor statement from Oracle, which say that don't take any business decision by listening this guy. Just contact to the marketing person to take any business decision. So, like, all my slides are just for the knowledge. Okay, so we'll talk about JVM architecture. We'll talk about compilers and optimization, and how Kotlin leverage the performance, and final thoughts, and what we are working in the future. So this is how the JVM architectural view looks like. Okay, so I have tried to create a bit of thing from me and from whatever the documents available. It doesn't matter that it's a Java file or it's a Kotlin file. All the files will get converted into class file. Okay, after the proper compilation. That's a static compilation. Okay, which Java C do, or a different Kotlin compiler do. After the class file get generated, we go from a class loader subsystem. I have a big presentation on class loader subsystem on Bangalore Jug blog. If you are interested, you can just send me a mail, and I will love to discuss in some time. Then the Java class loader subsystem actually is the reason that why Java is a secured language. So it let check all the entries, that it should be a valid class file, and it should not be a first class file, all those kind of entries. Then the class loader discuss with something called runtime area, which is very important for it, in which we maintain the heap, we maintain the stack, we maintain native methods, and a lot of other information we maintain into this data area. And definitely it discuss with the Java execution engine, where we talk with the garbage collector, we talk with the just-in-time compiler, which is the runtime compiler. We have a code cache actually, which makes our run very faster. So all these kind of things are into the Java execution engine. And very important to know that they are all interdependent on each other. So when we run a garbage collector, actually, we need to understand that this code has not been optimized by a runtime compiler. Okay, and when we have a runtime compiler optimized code, we need to tell garbage collector that be careful when you're coming to this area, because the JIT have the capability to change even the data structure of the code. Okay, so just don't think like it can totally it is more than what Ganesh was talking, refactoring. It can completely change your code and completely change the data structure of the code. So GC and the JIT need to work very closely, and they need to respect each other. Okay. And then finally we go to the native method calls, and then the native libraries, SO files or dylib files or DLL files on Windows, all those kind of things. So this typically is a very small view of how the JVM looks like. Okay, so the JVM looks like after the class file, and these are the areas where we work in. So let's see. Currently, we'll focus more on the JIT compiler. Okay, so I'll explain you what is JIT compiler and how we use the JIT compiler and how Kotlin use the JIT compiler. Okay, so this session cannot be so interactive, so I'll not raise much questions, which I generally used to do when I used to present in Bangalore Jug. But let's try to understand is that what is a runtime compiler. So Java have first there is something called Java compiler, that is Java C. So don't get confused with Java C. Java C is a kind of it's a kind of parser actually. You cannot say, I mean, it's not eligible to say compiler. Okay, so it's a parser where it just parses the line and it gets all the information. And yes, it follows all the things of compiler, like if you have studied in your college time, creating tokens and putting into the proper places and creating abstract syntax, it do all those kind of things. After Java C, the command goes to the Java, and when Java starts, actually the runtime compiler starts working. Okay, so a lot of things are there in the runtime compiler. We will see all of the things one by one. The first important thing is that we use interpreter into the runtime compiler. So we have a runtime compiler and we have interpreter. So you know Java is an interpreted language, but actually interpreters are too slow. Okay, how much I can just show you from some code, and we always have the scope to optimize the runtime code, because um, runtime codes are like say like you go to some movie and you watch the movie, and after 10 minutes you understood, oh, this movie is going to be boring, and you just come out. Okay, so if you actually have the runtime data, I think you have a very good scope of optimization. You can decide that I should see this movie or I should not see this movie. So most of the time your idea will be right. Okay, and if your idea is not right and your friend said that oh man, the second half of the movie was awesome, then we go for some path called de-optimization, where our optimization has not worked out. So we always create a path for de-optimization also. Okay, so before going to more of the runtime compiler, I'll just show you from the command line um, that how fast it is. Okay, good. We don't have any questions till now. And let me clear this, and um, let me see. I should have a bit of mathematical code. Yeah, this is good. So I am just doing some kind of sum, and I am doing some left and right things. So it's a simple code which do some kind of mathematical operation and run some loop. I mean, I cannot just run a hello world, because probably interpreter and runtime compiler or will give the better performance. So how you can work Java? Okay, Java C. Okay, so how you can run only interpreter? There is something called -xint, which say that run the Java in only interpreter mode. But before that, let me do nothing. Okay, so nothing means actually Java use a lot of heuristics. I will explain you that also. And we need to see the time. So Mac have a time command. Some places we have time -t and all those kind of commands. I really don't know in Windows how you should take the time command. So okay, this has been executed in less than a second. So 820 milliseconds. This execution has finished with the normal Java execution. Now what I'll do is that I will say just run the interpreter. Don't try to over smart and run the runtime compilers. And let's see the time. Yeah, so it's going to take some time. You can have your questions in between. Okay, come on, finish now. Yeah. So you have seen that it almost took like 39 seconds, where the with the runtime compiler actually it took less than 1 second. So it just took 820 milliseconds. And if I will only use the runtime compiler and not the heuristics with Java Decide, I can use something called minus XCOM. That means use only compiler mode. Okay, so if I use only compiler mode, oh sorry, it should be, yeah, it is little bit slower than, it is not little bit, actually, it is quite a good slower than the first one, where we are doing we are living on Java to decide the heuristics. So what actually Java do is, I'll come back, but you see in Java minus version, there is something called mixed mode here. Okay. So Java actually run mix of lot of things. We are going to learn that what it all things are. So this is just the data interpretation at the beginning, so that, and the code was running a for loop and doing some kind of sum. So nothing more than that, the code was. Okay, back to the presentation. So yes, I explained you that the interpreter is slow and the runtime compilers are fast, and definitely you can be biased towards some path which is like you are guaranteed to know that this path is correct. Okay, now before again proceeding to the runtime compiler, you need to understand that we have something called a static compiler also. Java bring a static compiler very late, but most of the language like GCC compiler and even I think the JavaScript use static compiler, or they use something called ahead of time compilation, AOT compiler. Java have bring it in JDK 9 onwards, which is a little late, but yeah, it's fine. So static compilers are different than runtime compiler. A static compiler at the initial level only try to do all the optimizations that are possible by a static compiler. Is it any optimization that is possible by a static compiler? Yes, there are a lot, like say the dead code removal, or say the expression optimization, or optimizing some of the tree structure in the AST. A lot of things are possible actually. Okay, so a static compiler can also do a good job, but at the peak performance, they cannot reach to a performance of runtime compiler. So runtime compiler at the peak time will be much better than, can't say much better, but yeah, it will be better than the static compilers like the AOT compilers. Okay. Uh, Now entering into the just-in-time compiler. Before going into the Kotlin, I know the Kotlin guys will be very eager, but it's more of an engineering thing. So you need to understand this to understand how the Kotlin performs, or even why the some of the API at the Kotlin in the Kotlin is written like that. Okay, so we will understand all these things. So just-in-time compilers comes in two flavors. Okay, and later slide we will understand that there are four different phases. Okay, so one of the just-in-time compiler is less optimized, which we say C1 compiler, and another is C2 compiler. Okay, most of you must be knowing C1 and C2 compiler, but just considering the holistic approach, and everyone should understand. That's why I'm explaining you. So C1 is a less optimized fast startup. So say like you are loading some kind of UI, or you want some kind of fast startup, you will go for the C1 compiler. C1 compiler will not do so much of optimization. It will try to do some optimizations. Whereas C2 compiler will be a highly optimized compiler, and definitely it will have a slower startup, because you are gathering the information for the optimization. You are taking all the profiling data. You will make the startup slow, right? So you are trying to get information across you. Okay, so just think like you are walking on the road and you want to gather all the things that are on the road. So definitely, if you want to gather more information, you need to walk slower. If you want to gather less information, you can walk faster, right? So you can just understand it by any means. Okay, I'm Just giving some lame example. Okay, so C2 compiler is very perfect for kind of server applications where you can give some time to slow startup, but at the peak performance, you want the code to run really faster. Okay, I have written something called Graal, and I have just grayed it out because Graal is some of the future compilers which we are working, and soon it is possible that C1 and C2 will be replaced by Graal in JDK. So people are working very aggressively on GRAL, and we are trying to reach on a performance where it can outperform C1 and C2, or it can at least reach to the performance level of C1 and C2. The difference between GRAL and the current C1 C2 compiler is that GRAL is written in Java, whereas the current JIT compilers are written in C++, which is really tough to debug for us. And second thing is that it's really tough to add some kind of new optimizations. Okay, so that's why we are preferring GRAL compiler over C1 C2 compiler. Okay, I have a separate complete discussion over the GRAL, how GRAL works, what are the optimizations GRAL do, and all those kind of things. Let's not go into this right now. Okay, I will just remove the full screen to see. Okay, fine. No questions. Good. So where we see the JIT compiler in working. So we see the JIT compiler in working where you run minus client. Minus client, no one run these days. Minus client is kind of hard coded in our code where we say if the CPU or the core is less than 2, it's a client. Okay, so these days even the local mobiles also have more than one core. So no one deals less than 2 cores. So client minus client is kind of gone. We have deprecated in the later JDK. So JDK 11 onwards, you will not see something like minus client. But JDK 8 guys still have the privilege to see minus client. Minus server is very common. You all use. By default, minus server is on. You use something called tiered compilation, which is a mix of C1 and C2. Okay, so basically actually tiered compilation is true. So tiered compilation is actually it try to load the things faster and then it tries to go to the optimization. So by default for JDK tiered compilation is true. Xint you have seen only interpreter mode, Xcomp is only compiler mode, and Xmixed is the mixture of interpreter and compiler mode, which is default. So we decide when to go to the compiler and when we should go back to the interpreter. Okay. The complete policy of the JIT compiler is mentioned in the link which I have given you here. So people who are interested parties, I will explain you the 4 different levels. Okay, so the 0 level is interpreter level, and then there are 4 different levels in which the 3 levels belongs to C1, where C1 do different kind of things. Okay, and C1 run with full optimization, but it don't have profiling information. C1 trying to gather information for C2 in level 2 and level 3, and in the C4 we run onto the fastest, I mean not the fastest, but the highest optimized level. Okay, and then this documentation will tell you much better than any of the Stack Overflow or any of the presentations. So please go through it and try to understand if you can. Yeah. So yeah, I will take a small break here, and this break is just if you have any if you have any questions, queries, complaints, and then I'll start forward. So default is tiered compilation, where it is a mix of C1 and C2. Okay, and it is a Xmixed. So both of them are default. Xmixed means use interpreter and compiler both. And in the compiler also we use tiered compilation true. Okay, so how to find it out this is, let me see if I can get it for you. Java -xx colon plus print flags final, and we should try to grep on something like tiered, and it should tell me the whole story. Okay, yeah, so you can see the second option, tiered compiler, is true, right? And One more question came in my mouth from this only, that how I can manage that I should run on C1 or C2, or how I can handle it. Okay. So you can use something called tiered stop at level. So you can see by default we stop at level 4, but you can say that tiered stop at level 1. That means you are letting, even tiered stop at level 3, only you are letting C1 compiler to work. C2 compiler works only at the tiered level 4. So you can manage it. One second. Server side, I can use only C2 for performance gain. Yes. Spring Boot has its own class loader. We will discuss about the class loader. Yes, most of the big applications, frameworks, IDE will have their own, not only one class loader, they will have series of class loader. I will explain you why that is true, because okay, a little bit deviation from here, but generally the Java follow a parent delegation model of the class loader. Okay, so Java say that boot classes means the JDK classes like a string classes or array list or all those classes which belongs to Java are higher priority, and then the second priority belongs to kind of extended classes which we put into the ext folder, and third classes priorities are the CP minus CP class path. Okay, so Java follow this parent delegation model in a fashion. Okay, but many of the IDEs, application server, and all, they really want to break that. Okay, why they want to break it? Because they think that their class are more important and it should get loaded first. Okay, so if you want to do that, you definitely have to write your own class loader, and you have to use the custom class loader, and you have to understand that which class loader I will load first. Loading your class first and maybe the respected class after can lead to different problems. Okay, so we will discuss that. Okay, if you are that much interested, we should have to go for a class loader, or what I can do is that I'll just show you that um, this is the Bangalore download slide, and I think yeah, you can see this presentation working with class loader. Okay, so it will probably give all the winded question in your mind, so it can help you out there. Okay, so now the next, please go to the question section. Okay, question section. When we compile a C program, we get machine code. What does it means compiling C1, C2, Graal, JIT versus Oracle, JIT versus OpenJDK in short? Okay. So basic questions are more important. So Varun have asked much basic question, and Crazy for Computer have asked much advanced questions. So basic questions are more easy to understand. When you compile a C program, we get a machine code. Yes, when we compile Java program, also we get a machine code. In the end, every code need to convert into machine code. Java do it into multi-level. So from the Java file, it goes to the class file. Class file do a lot of work, like it go from the runtime compilers and all, and then it reach to the machine code. Machine code means actually the native code, where we started delegating the work into the DLLs or SO files of the different machines. So you must be knowing the shared object files of the Linux, or DLL file of Windows, or dylib file of Mac, and all those kind of things. Okay, so Java also reached to the machine code, but before that, Java do a lot of optimization before it reached to the machine code. Okay. Now the question from JP Morgan is that Graal JIT versus Oracle JIT. Okay. See, I will not go into telling you the performance of this JIT or that JIT. So Graal is also a Oracle product also. So if I will, in few of the slides, I will discuss you the Graal performance with the C1, C2 performance. I can give you the link of the complete benchmarking where actually we have done the C1, C2 and the Graal performance. Okay. So we have taken this optimization, which is performing better, for another optimization, which one is performing better. So you can see that Graal is winning at many places, whereas C2 is winning at many places. Okay, so depends upon the idea is that Graal should win at least on all the places where C2 is winning. Then only it can be a default compilers. So Graal is still in JDK 11, but it is into the experimental mode. Yeah. Okay. Taking back to the slides. Okay, we will come back to the questions again. Yeah, so now I explained you a bit of what the JIT compiler do. I will show you some of the optimizations. Some optimizations are very easy to understand. Some optimizations are maybe little tough. If you have bunked a lot classes in your engineering, maybe it will tough to for you to understand. But let's see. So the first optimization which I will talk is the very simplest one is dead code removal and expression optimization. So if you will see the first code, you understand that that code can be optimized and rest one, rest two. In place of whole code, I can just say return x1 because x1 plus x2 and plus x1 minus x2. So x2 will get cancelled to x1 and we are doing divided by 2. So x1. So this whole code will be thrown just by a value of x1. So these are called expression optimization. So we can do this kind of optimizations and dead code removal you all have seen. So I am not covering it. Even the IDE can catch the dead code removal. Even the IDE can catch the expression optimization because these are really the static compiler work. So a static compiler can understand this kind of optimization. So you really don't have to reach to the runtime compiler. So I am quite sure that even C1 compiler can do all these kind of optimizations. Okay. So yeah, if you write this code in IntelliJ will probably give some gray line or red line downside, and it will tell you that you can optimize this code. Okay. So easy things. Monomorphic dispatch. So monomorphic dispatch is a little complicated, but let's understand in the easy way. I think most of us are aware of what is polymorphism. So I'll just make it. So yeah, what polymorphism actually do is you say that you can override the methods. Okay. So if I have one method, say something like get color. So in Java, you have very much control that you can override the methods. But fortunately or unfortunately, Java treats every method as a potential overridden method. So in Java, actually, you don't have to write anything to override a method. You can literally override any methods. Okay, definitely you have to follow the inheritance logic. So this is actually extra pressure on the runtime because on the runtime, till you are not calling the method, okay, from the instance of whatever you want to call, we are kind of in a gray area that which method ideally I should call. I should call a base method. I should call the derived method or derived to derived method. So this can be only resolved at runtime, right? So this is what the polymorphic calls are. So most of the language actually polymorphic calls they will tell you to treat with some kind of a special word. Like I think in the C++ we used to write virtual. Then only it makes that you can do a overridden methods. Now with this override, actually there are problems. Okay, at the runtime we make the code slow because we have to decide at the runtime. So JIT compiler will keep searching for monomorphic dispatch. So JIT compiler have the AST, it have the complete syntax tree, and it know that hey, this method has never got overridden. Okay, then why I should carry the burden of polymorphic call of this method? Okay, so say like some simple, say like get color, and I'm returning the color, and it's only written into the animal class. Okay, then what I can do in place of a dot get color, I can just return with a dot color. Okay, I really don't have to do a polymorphic call. Okay, so what I see that it's a monomorphic call, it's not a polymorphic call, and I optimized the function call with a direct data variable. Okay, so I can see that and I can optimize that. This can go wrong. Yes, it can go wrong if at the runtime someone can override this method, which is very much possible. Then I will insert something called de-optimization code, which in the technical term we say uncommon trap in JDK. So anytime when we do a optimization, we insert something called uncommon trap. Means if something goes wrong, bring back to the old code. Okay, so that path we always have that. Okay, so if you will go into the JDK source and you will just search for uncommon trap, you will get a lot of uncommon traps. Okay, so in general, if you are not overriding something or the runtime, so this code will rock, and the JIT compiler will attain a very high performance, okay, by removing all the calls which are not actually polymorphic in nature, but by default we left it polymorphic. So JIT compiler will make all those call monomorphic, and then it will try to dispatch with the direct data variable. Okay, so okay, yeah, questions I will come back again. Let me talk about 2-3 more optimizations. So I believe that this optimization is clear to you, that what is monomorphic dispatch. Okay, um, how you can learn more? You can learn more by talking to people, and you can also see if we have something related to monomorphic. Okay, we will have something with bimorphic, I think. Let me see. Yeah, so there are a lot of bimorphic. So okay, so not spending time, even though I have in the further slide, what is bimorphic call is actually the same kind of thing what I have explained you in the monomorphic. If a method have only two overridden methods, then I can replace that with a if else. That is called bimorphic call. So I will try to make a polymorphic call a bimorphic call. Okay. Yeah, I have covered here. So monomorphic calls, bimorphic calls, and megamorphic calls. Okay, so you can see that we have something called bimorphic calls inlining true. So when I will optimize the polymorphic call to a bimorphic call, we can do inlining of the code also. Okay, people who know inlining, good. If you don't know, you can just raise the hand. I expect you to know inlining. Okay, so so please raise the hand wisely. Okay, so these are the values with which are true actually. So you can see, and I have explained you what is the monomorphic and bimorphic calls. So we have seen we have attained almost 7 to 8% of the performance optimization by replacing the true polymorphic call with monomorphic calls and bimorphic calls. Okay, so the figures are really good actually, and that's why it is default true. Okay, anyway, I am covering inlining and caching. So inlining and caching is very simple. Actually, when you see that a method can be easily embedded into another method, you just inline it, right? So you take the complete thing and you put the complete method body into the parent method body. That is just called inlining. And caching means like if you are using p1.x and p2.y at many places. So what I will do is that this is actually a variable call on an instance class. So I will just replace that with a temp variable and we will cache this value. Okay, so we will use our caches which most of the advanced computer provide. Okay. In Java, the inlining is true for less than 35 kilobytes. So if a method is totally less than 35 kilobyte, Java by default inline that into the JIT compiler. Okay. There is a question that I have asked that actually it's a question that why inlining in Java is more powerful than language like C++. Okay. And I really have the old picture of C++ because it's quite some day that I have not worked on, but there can be changes. So what we do actually in okay, we'll come back on this. So what actually we do in C++ is that you write inlines. Okay, so you make something like macro calls where you say that let's inline this method. But Java don't do that. Java, the runtime compiler or the JVM decides that which method need to be inlined. And the beauty of this is that when there will be a method which is a hot method means applicable for JIT optimization, then only Java will decide that we should inline this method. I can give you a very simple example which most of us cite is like say like there is a method which is for the financial calculation. Okay, so financial calculation method will become hot only on the day when the salary will be delivered to the people. Okay, so that's a good day. So when you are actually the finance is working and they are working on providing the salary, actually all those methods which really deals with the salary calculation or the finance part, that method will directly go for the optimization. So a runtime compiler have much more information that which method need to be inlined and which method need not to be inlined. Okay, which me as a programmer cannot tell that, hey, inline this method and inline that method. How I can tell that? Okay, whenever you see a method to be hot, you just inline it. When you see a method to be cool, you just don't inline it. Okay. So that's why I said that inlining of Java is better and powerful than the language like C++, where the runtime compiler actually decide that what to inline and what not to inline. Okay. I will talk about one more optimization and then we will take some questions. So I think these things are getting clear, and if not clear, we will halt it for a minute. Okay, so these are the benchmark that has been we have taken from Java Micro Benchmarking Harness, JMH, and you can see the speed of a monomorphic call and a bimorphic call and a megamorphic call. Okay, so actually it's kind of a same method on which you can see this the speed. So megamorphic calls, if we inline megamorphic calls, you can see that there is no much speed difference. Whereas a monomorphic and bimorphic calls with the inlining is much faster than the normal monomorphic and bimorphic calls. Okay, so converting a megamorphic call to a monomorphic and bimorphic calls is faster, and converting a monomorphic call to an inlineable monomorphic or an inlineable bimorphic call is much faster. Okay, that means now you have control of whole code at one place. Okay, so I can just run damn fast. Okay, so again, I will take 2 minutes break. You have question, you can please go ahead. If we explicitly mention an inline method in the Kotlin, yes, I am coming on to that. Yes, Mr. Ganguly, I am coming on that. So yes, in Kotlin, actually, there is something called explicit inlining, okay, which makes it much more faster. Does JDK decide on monomorphic or a developer has to write? No, JDK decide that which call need to make monomorphic and which call need to make bimorphic calls. Okay, we don't have to do anything. Once inline, just does JDK de-inline if method is not. No, so when we optimize something, actually we don't de-optimize things if there is something like uncommon trap comes. Okay, so it is not that we need to keep putting things for optimization and keep taking it de-optimization. The actual technology of optimization and de-optimization I have not discussed, but interested party can search for something called OSR, that is called online stack replacement. So we actually have all the stacks ready. Okay, that this is C1 stack, this is C2 stack, this is C3 stack, and we will keep fitting all the stacks whichever is required. Okay, so as you have seen that there are 4 layers, right? There are 3 of the C1 and 1 of C4. So any stack can fit at any time and any stack can be thrown at any time. Okay, so the JIT keep watching that and we decide that. How to identify hot and cold method? Okay. All the hot and cold methods get decided by JIT by the number of runs. So not inline, I should look for C2. So I will show you, this is the complete list of C2, okay, where actually you should see for the number of times, let me get the data for you. C2 root length. Okay, so generally what happens, I'll search out, it is not with the C2 name. So what generally happens that it's a kind of hard-coded thing which you can optimize by the JVM argument. So say like when we say that 5,000 times a method has been called, okay, or a loop has been tracked, it is eligible to call as a hot method. Okay, so it means that it is eligible for the C2 to put the optimization. Okay, the same thing for the C1 is I think 1500 and C2 it's 5000. Okay, I will check the value, but these values can be optimized. Okay, it can be changed with the JVM argument. While working with JavaScript closure, we get into mess with this pointer. This is the problem in Java. We might cause this difference. Yeah, little bit out of topic, but I will tell that what is messy in with the pointers in Java and what is not messy. So generally, for the outside world, I think most of the things are not messy. till you are not using something like unsafe and all. So what Varun we can do is that we can discuss it sometimes offline. Okay, so I will explain you how the Java handles the pointer and how the other language handles the pointer. Okay, and if you really want to handle a pointer by Java, what are the options you have? Okay, so we will discuss it sometime. Um, I would like to learn more on monomorphic and bimorphic calls. Can you please provide me some documents? Sure, I will try to provide you some documents. The most interesting document is the read the code actually. Let me show you where these all the codes are written. Okay, so that's a very good point you have raised. And I think I had a presentation. Let me go on to this code and mhm. So here there is something called Opto. Yes, so this Opto is actually optimization folder, right? So all the optimizations which actually C1 and C2 put will be mentioned here. Okay, so you can go, you can, if you can understand, you understand. If you don't understand, ask someone who can understand, or try to read the documentation or whatever. I mean, left on you. Okay, so then there are things like compiler, and these are how the compiler makes the abstract syntax tree and all those kind of things. You can get it here. Opto is actually a short form of optimization, and then you can have how we work on the runtime. So here you can get the code of the policies, like the different 4 levels, the de-optimization, lot of other codes will be mentioned here. Okay, so all your wish, you can go here and see. And that's it. I mean, interpreter, if you are interested, interpreter code will be easy to understand, so you can start with interpreter code. Okay, so these are the different codes which you can look into. Yeah. So taking back the slides and starting back, I will come back to the question later. Okay, I'll come back to the question later. So hopefully so far so good. Now, yeah, someone asked me the inline function in Kotlin, right? Just that question came and the slide came. So what Kotlin actually do? Kotlin, you can mention an inline marking before the function, and what Kotlin actually do, that even if it is more than a bimorphic call, say like there is a 3 state of polymorphic call, or is there a 4 level of polymorphic call? Okay, it can be possible that the method has been overridden 3 times, or a method has been overridden 4 times. Kotlin actually takes care of all of it. Okay, so yes, I have the data. So here I can show you that megamorphic level 3 calls and megamorphic level 4 calls. Okay, you can see with the explicit inlining and without explicit inlining. Okay, so if you will see with the explicit inlining, means when you're using the word inline into the Kotlin, you can see the performance is like 4.9, and for call level 4 it is 5.2, whereas without explicit inlining it is almost like 6, and the megamorphic call, the for the level 4 it is 10. Okay, so I have put the link downside where you can go and see the complete graphical view actually if you want for this. So you can see the monomorphic calls, the value will not change much. Why it is not changing? Because JVM is taking care. So Kotlin really don't have to take care. Bimorphic calls, the value is not changing much because JVM takes care. So either you write explicit call or you don't write explicit call, doesn't make too much difference. But megamorphic level 3 calls, level 3 means layer 3 calls, 3 overridden calls, and megamorphic 4 overridden calls. You can see that clear difference between using the inline keyword, here, and not using the inline keyword. So you can see this data. I hope the person who have raised the question got the answer for this. Yeah. When I will be sharing this presentation? Anytime, whenever you want. I can mail you now only. Okay, let's first finish the presentation. Okay, so far so good. Let's move forward. Now I am going to talk you one of the very important optimizations which we do it, and I will show you that how Kotlin over smart this optimization. Okay, so first of all, you need to understand that how Java handles null pointers. So if you will go to any of the languages which deals with the native language directly, like C or C++, if you are going for a null pointer, means there is no reference at the memory, you will go for segmentation fault, right? All of us have mostly seen the segmentation fault in our college time, right? Where the Turbo C compiler used to crash. Okay, so you will lose that blue screen if you are that 2000 time frame kind of developer. And then later also you have seen that you can see a SIGWI call where there is a segmentation fault that will happen. But in the Java, it don't go for a segmentation fault, right? So what happens when some reference is not reachable in Java? You see a null pointer, right? How we do this in Java is actually all the codes which I have written on the left, say point.x and point.y. How Java for all the references, actually Java put a if else condition. Okay, so wherever a reference is trying to use the data variable, Java will put a if condition. So Java will convert this code if point not equals a double equals to null through null pointer exception, else make it x and y. Now this is good. This will not go for the segmentation fault. We will go for a null pointer exception, and null pointer exception is an exception which can be handled. It's a handleable exception. So that's a very good thing. What the old languages were not providing me, at least Java is providing me that I can handle that. But the problem is that now think like your whole code base will have more than millions and billions of this kind of references. For all the references, if I'll put a if and else condition, actually it's time consuming. It's a runtime kill for the compiler, right? So what JIT compiler here do is JIT compiler keep watching this, and whenever the iteration of JIT compiler will over, like say 5000 and 1500, which I have explained you for the C2 and C1 and C2 compiler, JIT compiler will say, oh, this code is not throwing actually null pointer exception anywhere. Okay, in my profiling data, this code is not going from null pointer exception. Looks like this code has written good, and it will try to optimize this code into the older way. Okay, so it will directly put point x and point y, and we will leave an uncommon trap for the de-optimization path, right? Why de-optimization? Yes, it is very much possible that for 5000 or 10,000 iteration, you have never thrown a null pointer, but it is possible that you can throw it after. Okay, if that will happen, we can go for a path of de-optimization where we will put our old code back. This is actually little complicated for us, because what happens when you don't catch it into the Java language, when you say if point double equals to null, okay, when you are removing this kind of code and you are getting a dereference, you are getting a reference which is not actually right, the operating system will try to take the handle and it will try to give you segmentation fault. So we have to take control back from the native to the Java, and we need to tell the native that, wait, we have optimized this code, we need to check that what went wrong, and then we put a path of de-optimization. So we have to do a lot of playing into the stack actually, and we have to touch a lot of even the native stacks to handle this. Okay, so what I want to say that it's really tough, but actually we have seen the JIT optimization of null pointer check gives almost a 10% improvement in a production code. Okay, so we have seen this with all the benchmarking we have done, that almost 10% of the code has been improved, 10% performance. Okay, de-optimization complete story is written here. If you can understand, you try to understand, and just goes block by block and you can understand. I have already told you it's all written in C++, so little tough, but those people who are C++ programmers, they can understand it much better. Now I will show you the this game into the Kotlin. Okay, that how Kotlin handles it. Is that I am running out of time?
No, Vaibhav, you have enough time.
Rohit, is that?
You have enough time. You have enough time.
Okay. So another 10-15 minutes, I'll try to finish, but I just want to go slow. Okay, people should understand that whenever we will talk something next, it should have the context. Okay.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
So yeah, now let's go that how Kotlin handles this. Hmm, okay. One second. Yeah. So this is a null check benchmarking that has been done. So if you are putting explicit null check and if you are putting an implicit null check, you can see the performance of explicit null check. How is the performance of explicit null check, right? It is much faster than the implicit null checks. So for all the people who actually keep putting null pointer check, I will suggest you, I will request you that please go and see your data source, that why your data source is actually throwing a null. Okay, if a data source should not throw a null, actually it should not throw a null. So putting a null check actually is not a very good solution. You should understand a data source. And you know, these days a lot of annotations like at the rate nullable and not nullable is available in all kind of IDs, so you can use that also. Okay, Java cannot do that because of some backward compatibility. So we will actually not discuss that. So this is Tony Hore. You know who is Tony Hore? Tony Hore is actually he's a genius who has made a lot of languages, and this I am showing his apology letter who he has given in 2009 London conference, where he said that by mistake I have developed null pointer. Okay, it was a dollar mistake, it was $1 million mistake, and I can understand that it has created a lot of issue now. Okay, but at that time actually I have not understood that why I have introduced the null pointer. It was required, it was that time requirement, and I have done that. So anyway, yeah, now comes to the Kotlin, that how Kotlin handles null pointer. So this is a typical small code of Kotlin. I am not a Kotlin programmer, but I can code only this much. So in Kotlin, whatever you will write, by default, it cannot be nullable. Okay, so in the first case, if you try to put a equal to null, it will just give you a compilation error. Okay, so in the Kotlin, you need to put a question mark. I don't know if it has been changed into the latest Kotlin compiler, but this is how it was some years before. You have to put a question mark, and then only you are fine to handle null. Okay, and whenever you will put a question mark, now you can see the last statement. You always have to say b not equal to null, then only I can say b dot length. Okay, else I cannot use b dot length. So anytime I have to use b dot length, I have to put an explicit check that b should not be equal to null. Now you are understanding that where the whole code is going. Now what the whole code is doing, the whole code is telling runtime compiler that any variable cannot reach to a null. Okay, so please even don't go for the hot compilation, don't go for the any kind of hot method checking, and you just get the surety from the Kotlin language that my variables can never go for a null pointer explicitly if you are not throwing a null pointer. Okay, so you can understand that Kotlin from the run number 1 can totally leverage the performance of the JIT compiler, which actually uh, optimize the null pointers. Okay, so I hope this is understandable, and you need to understand is that the null pointer relief is not only about the syntax; it is making your language much faster, right? So no de-optimization path, only optimization path from iteration number 1, not from iteration number 5,000 or 1,500. Okay, so that's the advantage that Kotlin gives you. Okay, now I'll talk about some of the optimizations which actually JVM and Kotlin and all the languages handles into the most common way. Why I am talking in this to the Kotlin presentation, just for your engineering knowledge. Okay, so there is a very important optimization which is called a scalar replacement. What a scalar replacement actually do is that when you create an object, okay, many times we need to see that is that the object scope is only into this method. If the object scope is only into this method, we will not put object into the heap, which you have typically learned in your school, college, And even I think you are learning now that all the object reference goes to the heap. Okay, not really actually. So that is called escape analysis, where the object will not be created into the heap. Okay, but if the object is visible outside your method scope, okay, then we can have something called arg escape and global escape, where we can use different level of escaping. Okay, so the complete detail of scalar replacement is onto this PDF. PDF are little boring to read, but there are a lot of code written into this PDF. You can go and read it. So if you will see the performance, then you can really see that no escape object, which actually don't go to the heap, have much higher performance than any of the other structure. It is global escape or it is partial escape. Okay. So again, I have given you the link of the benchmarking. You can read the detail, and I have put the link of the Graal performance also. But right now for this presentation, don't go for the Graal performance. Okay, so that we can, if time permits, we can discuss sometimes later. Vectorization effect is one of the very important performance which all the modern architecture use it. So what it do actually, if you are writing something like for loop a of I, a is array equal to b of I plus c of I. Actually, in the modern vectorization effect, it just unfold your complete for loop, and it will put a1 equal to b1 plus c1, a2 equal to b2 plus c2, a3 equal to b3 plus c3, and if the cores are available, it will just give all into the parallel codings. Okay, so it will not follow your directives of the for loop, which is kind of a sequential approach. So all the modern processor can use this. Okay, so you should go to the wiki link of automatic vectorization, and it has explained all the things, and it has explained into much detail. So you should go and read it. Okay, fine. So yeah, these kind of all the optimizations come onto the vectorization. Okay, and this is the benchmarking of vectorization, where you can see the performance impact by the vectorization. Okay, so I am just leaving on you to, after the post presentation, you can see the details. Okay, these are the simple optimizations like thread and loop optimization. We can be biased to the thread which is first came, so that we do with the bias locking. Many times it happens that the thread which is locking it first, actually that thread will be only keep locking. So sometimes we use something called bias locking equal to true. And loop optimizations, we can combine two loop if the loops are independent on each other and taking the same time. We can combine, we can replace while with do while, because do while is less number of instruction than while. Sometimes we can tile the loops, so we'll try to fit the loops into the 64 or 32-bit architecture. We will not try to get the loop into, like, say 19 bits or something in between. Okay, so we'll try to fit into the page size, whatever the 4 MB page size. So we'll try to fit the loops. So these are the typical optimizations which most of the advanced language actually do, and Java also do. Maybe my last slide. Yeah, the real life challenges and some of the future is that we are looking for high startup with the C1 and C2 compiler, which actually was not happening, and some of the low latency system actually looks for the high startup compiler. If any one of you know the share market or trade with the share market, you know the first 15 seconds or the 20 seconds are very important for the share market. So I cannot just say that my compiler is getting heat up. Wait, okay, so we need to use different kind of techniques. People use different kind of hacks, but we have came with something like ahead of time compiler, AppCDS, which actually makes the startup time very fast. What is AOT and what is AppCDS? Maybe we will discuss on sometime else. But these are some way that we can optimize the startup. We can optimize the startup. Okay. These are the links. Bangalore Jug download, Kotlin language. I don't have to give you, and inode blog is written here. So he write a lot of benchmarking. You can go to his benchmarking and you can discuss. He is very much active. Also, you can ask questions if you want, and he will reply you. Okay, I am done. Thanks a lot, and we can be on 2 minutes or 4 minutes depending upon the time for the questions.
Yes, meanwhile,
What if we? Yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Vaibhav. Actually, I was just telling, like, after the session ends, we can go out into the launch area, and you can interact with the participants.
Uh, okay, so I will just take the 2 minutes question here because I am
Sure,
feeling
sure,
hungry
sure.
and
Okay,
I think
okay, no problem.
breakfast is more important. Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, I'll go into the launch area. So thank you for the people who said it's a good presentation. B.length use the same. What if? Yeah. I think it is the same code. What you could put then the same root as what if you use B.length question mark then the same root as Java, right? So when you will say when you are saying question mark, actually, what will happen? It will when it will convert the JVM, it will put an explicit null check. Okay, so it will make the Kotlin language always make sure that it will never go for a null pointer. Okay, and that's the beauty of why we have used that kind of a structure in the Kotlin. Unfortunately, Java cannot use that because of the lot of backward compatibility, and we can.
Vaibhav, can you raise your hand again?
Sorry, guys. So. I will come to chat. Okay. Yeah. So the host has been thrown for me for a minute, but I am back. So we can have a quick quiz. Okay, Ganesh, quiz I will leave on you. Just give me 1 minute. Does it not that so much of code de-optimization that Java does comes with an yes? Good question, Mr. Ganguly. So de-optimization really don't happen too many times. Okay, so if you're really running some kind of big application and you want to see, then there is something called the print compilation. You should go with something called -xx colon print compilation and check that how many times the code go for the de-optimization. It will give you all the information. It will tell you all the optimizations is taking how much time. Okay, so each part. Okay, and it can tell you also that how much time it takes for the de-optimization. Like Python, should Java also pick a release and break backward compatibility? No, we have people into the system which are very serious customers and they are still using the jars of 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, and they are just moving jar from one release to another release and it's running perfectly fine. Okay, in JDK 9 we have broken a bit of backward compatibility, but the major backward compatibility which we are mentioning into our Java language specification, like every object can be nullable. Okay, that is it's kind of a constitutional right for a class. So every object can be nullable. We cannot break this kind of backward compatibility. In the JDK 10, we came with something called var classes, which I will discuss sometime later, which just behave like the Kotlin classes. Okay, so var classes can never go for a null pointer. Okay, and these things we have introduced in JDK 10 and all. Okay, but there are a lot of limitations on the var classes, like you cannot do any operation which is related to nullable, right? Like synchronization and lot of things. Okay, so please see var classes JDK 10. I have complete presentation, but we can discuss it sometimes. Okay, there are so many presentations. I don't know. Is there a possibility Java takes Kotlin Scala path in simplifying the syntax? We are trying our best, actually. Not the Kotlin or Scala path. We are trying whatever the path we can take. And if there are features, okay, like in the modern language, and if it is not breaking the backward compatibility, we are taking it. So if you will read the methods that have been the classes which came into JDK 12 or JDK 13, it has a lot of to do with um, um, kind of database classes where you can directly use the database. So we can discuss on JDK 11, 12, 13, 14 session somewhere where I can actually tell you that Java is quite better in these things now. Okay. So that was the question for Srinivasan. That was the reply for Srinivasan question. Yeah. Okay. Um, Despite my reservation for Oracle, it has been. Yes, we are looking. See, the I don't know. I should not say these things all in the recording, but all the languages are now getting impressed by all the different language. Okay, so none of the language is really living with the fact that, oh, no, I will not do this. Okay, so we have already seen a big break in the kind of Nokia industry where they said no, and then there was a problem. So Java is using all the features, like, yeah, as Crazy for Computer has mentioned, record, switch expression, and a lot of new features has been came. Okay, but yeah, people need to move on Java. Still, as per with the last, we have done the analysis. Still, almost like 70% people use on Java 8. But if you're migrating on the new Java, you can use the new features. And yes, it's a serious language and it's a serious platform. We cannot just keep breaking our backward compatibility in one to go. Okay, so right now, even in the Python, you just keep writing hello world and little bit of utility code, but Java is not like that. Okay, a lot of big applications run on it, and there are applications which I know which are running from last 15 and 16 years before even one time shutdown. So definitely this kind of serious things we need to respect, and we cannot just keep breaking things here and there. Okay, but at the meantime, we will try to do whatever best for the community. Okay, Rohit, I'm closing all the questions here now. If someone have the question, you can reach me onto my email ID, or okay, so I'll definitely help you. If you want any further session, please reach to Rohit or Ganesh, and we can discuss about class loaders or GLAL compiler or garbage collector, whatever I work in. I work in the VM area. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Vaibhav.
You.
Thank you for coming for the meetup and sharing